Good morning, gamers. Been playing a lot of a game you may have heard about lately, and I'd like to give it a proper review. This is Expedition 33. So as of recording this, I have 57 hours on my main file. I've completed all endgame, postgame content, which, by the way, is quite difficult if you're looking for that kind of thing. But regardless, let's just go over some of the basics. So like most games, you have your generic attribute scaling. In this case, gives you 5 of them: vitality, might, agility, defense, and luck. They all give you some sort of power on top of having a scaling mechanic similar to a Souls game with your weapons. So if you see here on agility and defense, I have ranks associated with them. And each point of these attributes will give me additional damage for my weapon. So that's what I've been spec'd into. It's something to pay attention to if you're looking to fully min-max your damage output. And as for the skill tree, pretty simple as well. You just path through the nodes, spending skill points that you receive upon level up, and you can pretty much get them all once you get your level high enough. So don't worry too much about the choices. And with the attributes as well, you can spend your recoats to just reset the entire tree, spec into something else early on if you want to try out new stuff before you have everything unlocked. Very forgiving system. And you can use up to 6 abilities at once, so there's a plethora of build potentials just with this skill system alone. And here's the overall stat page for the character. We have the weapon, which determines all of your damage and has a bunch of special effects. So for this one, you see I start in Virtuous Stance, etc., etc. Just lets you make sort of any flavor of build that you want, usually starting with a weapon. I was using this one for a long time just to inflict self-burn and then get a damage buff, and also apply burn on the attack. So there's a lot of different weapons you can choose from that are all potentially viable. And yeah, so the Picto system, very cool as well. It goes hand in hand with the Lumina's system over on the right side. As you can see, the trade-off for putting Pictos on is that you can't put them on any other character. So for example, I can't put Confident on another party member because it's already occupied. However, that is where the Lumina's system comes in, where if you go into here and sort by active, just to show you, you have a lot of options for adding the buff of the Picto with the trade-off of losing the innate stat bonuses such as like speed or crit rate, health, but you get the effect. So you can still benefit on multiple characters from the same Picto effect, leading to some really powerful combos. So for example, in this build, I have Mael just entirely spec'd into some crazy damage potential, and the other 2 party members are focused on stacking burn. So one of them dies on spawn, inflicting burn and break, and then the other one just stacks burn with the default attack. Very good for taking out almost every enemy in the game. I've only had a couple of times where the enemy lived more than one of my full combos. So very, very powerful system here, and I've only played one really powerful build. I know there's plenty of them out there. You can kind of do whatever you want with this system. You know, there's 5 party members and there's hundreds of Pictos, there's hundreds of weapons. And of course, I played on the expert difficulty. You could always just go through on story or expeditioner mode. Great alternatives if you just want a nice story experience, not too much difficulty. But I like my games to be challenging, and this game delivered on that. There were some enemies that I fought way too early just because I wanted to, and I've seen other people fight them way earlier. Like, for example, they fight Sprong at level 30 without the damage cap removed, and that to me is just insane. It's taking like 30 minutes of just nonstop parrying and perfect gameplay. I'm not that masochistic, but I do feel like I should be tested in terms of, does my build beat this content? If not, then I need to make some changes, which I iterated upon multiple times. I changed out party members, trying out different spells. I had a healer at some point. I had like a dedicated tank type role, and it was very fun to experiment with what they presented me in terms of bosses or the chromatic enemies, even just the generic enemies. If the generic enemies stack up in such a way that their buffs overlap and you're not expecting a certain attack to come out, like, they can still fuck you up. Take, for example, these guys, these creepy hand guys you've seen at the beach cutscene. They will fuck you up. Talking like 4,000 or 5,000 damage a hit, and of course you're not supposed to come here right away, but still, if they get matched up with something else that gives them more attacks, it could catch you off guard. But anyways, the game is entirely turn-based with a little bit of mechanics added on top. There's, as you can see, quick time events going on with your attacks, and also there are ways to dodge enemy attacks. There is just straight up dodge, which is more forgiving. There is parry, which is a very tight window and also can provide you with a counter attack if you parry every hit of a certain attack. And then you have jumps, which a few enemies can get their attacks jumped and then proceeded to be countered. And finally, there's a gradient counter, which is more so of a parry, but with a larger window and more apparent when it occurs. Here's what the standard battle UI looks like. You have the turn order on the left there with all of your options for what actions you want to take during your turn. Pressing L2 will bring up this aim menu. This spends 1 AP to do an attack. Pretty reliable because it doesn't use your turn up. You have your gradient charges down there, which use gradient attacks. And these, unlike skills, do not consume your turn or any AP. They simply spend the meter. So early on, you can use them to essentially get a bonus turn, which is quite strong. Next up, we have the items. These do not get consumed permanently, so when you rest at a checkpoint, these will actually refill, and you have just basic stuff like healing, giving AP to an ally, and of course reviving an ally. And of course you have your skills, which you pick 6 of from your character screen. These spend AP and are a majority of what you'll be using. And lastly, you have your just normal attack. This will by default generate 1 AP and will consume your turn. So enough about the combat. Let's get right into the graphical, technical details. The open world, and even traveling around inside these different worlds, there's almost no UI elements. As you can see, I just have a compass and some button prompts. Truly incredible. Walking around is so immersive and just overall refreshing from the modern gaming era of gigantic quest markers everywhere and world maps and all this stuff. Let's look at this environment. absolutely beautiful. Combined with one of the best soundtracks I've heard in modern gaming, this game is simply beautiful. And finally, the story. This story was so incredible. There were multiple times throughout that I was just edge of my seat, waiting to see what happens next. All these burning questions. Even now, after a full playthrough, I am still wanting more. I'm wanting more DLC, more lore, maybe a different type of perspective, you know, like maybe we play as a different person in this painter association. Like, who are they? All those kind of things. From the very first scene on the harbor with Sophie, that heartbreaking scene, it immediately set the tone for me that this game was going to be incredibly depressing. And to me, I resonated more with kind of the opening disaster, if you will. I wanted to find out more. I didn't even know who the characters were, but I already cared about them. Why are they getting erased? You know, why does the paintress look so sad? And who is this strange old man at the beach just slaughtering everybody else? I won't touch on too much about every key story point, because I feel like there are better videos out there if you want to really dive into the lore. However, I would encourage you to either pick up the game yourself and experience it, or simply watch through the cutscenes, kind of like a mini movie. I feel like one of the main takeaways for me from this game's story is that it really has some implications in real life. I feel like as gamers, we all get lost in a canvas from time to time, depending on what we're going through at the time, what we're interested in at the time, what's new. And maybe that's what this game is all about in the end. Just exploring different worlds with wild possibilities, much more exciting than real life. But at the same time, trying not to get lost in our fantasies and completely lose ourselves. So with that being said, I would rate this game 5 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend. It's one of the best RPGs I've probably ever played. Thank you so much for watching.